I'd now like to recognize Congressman Rehberg for questioning. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Kritz, for the opportunity to sit at the dais. I am a fifth-generation Montana rancher. Actually, my great-grandfather was born in Montana in 1873, left home at 9, and started breaking horses at Fort Assiniboine at 11 in a paid capacity, and lived to be 91. So you can, in fact, work as a young man, even back in the 1880s, and survive. I've come to the conclusion in my 11 years in Congress that it isn't necessarily a difference in philosophy between Republicans and Democrats. There's a difference in philosophy between urban and rural. And this is one of those situations where I think the Department of Labor is overstepping its boundaries, its knowledge base, and frankly, I think you're sitting around watching reruns of Blazing Saddles, and that's your interpretation of what goes on in the West, and it isn't anymore. Now, I've taken all the glamour out of my ranching operation because I don't rope, and I don't tie, and I don't brand with a hot iron. I use a self-catching head gate. I use a squeeze that is hydraulic, and I have a calf table. You can't get hurt. It is impossible. You could have a 5-year-old out there running it. I've got kids that are working for me, my son's friends, who come out and help with self-starting generators that are run by propane, which under your rule looks like will no longer be able to be used. We have a feedlot operation where we take the kids in the feedlot from the neighboring places, and we pay them to move silage around or shovel manure. If it's a hard and fast rule that they can't work in a feedlot or they can't man a vaccination in a self-catching head gate, then it lacks common sense. I don't get it. Now, Mr. Chairman, I can assure you, as chairman of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, that you haven't seen the last of this. I will have a rider on my appropriations bill that I write for the House of Representatives that will keep you from implementing this rule. It makes no sense. We want a safe work environment for our children and our neighbors' children. Let me ask you a question about herding. I had, when I was elected to Congress, 600 head of cashmere goats. My neighbor, who was the publisher of the largest newspaper in the state of Montana, wanted me to put his 10-year-old son to work. So I put him on a youth motorcycle, little Kawasaki 60, and he herded goats for me on a daily basis. Now, would that be exempt under this rule, or would he not be able to work for me as a 10-year-old riding a youth motorcycle? As I understand it, herding is not allowed. It doesn't say anything about how the herding occurs. And with goats or sheep, it's a constant. I mean, I also had... the
regulation doesn't say that herding's allowed.
Says it's not allowed.
No, the regulation doesn't say that herding is not allowed.
As I read the material, it looked as if jumping on a horse and going out and herding cattle was not going to be allowed for those under 16.
Okay. But you just added an element that could result, I mean...
Well, see, this is the problem because, you know, the Department of Labor doesn't know agriculture. It's a way of life. It's a lifestyle. And just because a 4-H student or FFA may have a show animal, but it's also how they learn. They might climb under a tractor with their neighbor just to learn the mechanics. And you don't learn this from a book. You don't need to go to a class. You learn it from your neighbors and your friends and your relatives. And you know, I'm just appalled. It really bugs me to read something like this and expect this one-size-fits-all knowledge from Washington, D.C. to try and determine what is appropriate for agriculture within a state like Montana. It just baffles me. So as I had suggested before, Mr. Chairman, we're not done with this. I do get to put the riders on. I know it'll pass the House. I have no idea whether it'll pass the Senate. I'll do everything I possibly can to keep this regulation from ever being implemented as it is written, unless you go back and just spend a lot more time with Farm Union, Farm Bureau, Grange, you name it, I don't care who it is, in the Department of Agriculture to try and come up with some kind of a sensible, reasonable regulation that truly keeps our children safe, while at the same time allows the next generation to take over their family farm or ranch. Thank you.